welcome anyone that's listening. What we're going to be talking about today is a different format for our educational seminar. And a big topic of discussion right now is how do you properly help borrowers make a better decision, help them get to the finish line, help them be more efficient in their buying decisions, selling decisions, all that fun stuff. There's lots of different topics that come around this. People will call it helping people get to a close, which has a bad connotation, I think. And I know for sure that there are certain agents that are able to more quickly move people to the finish line, and more importantly, get them what they want. Which quite often, honestly, people I don't feel like they don't really know what they want until somebody guides them that decision, right? And so I think that's the purpose of the day. We're going to talk about that for about an hour or so, and we want to have a free flow discussion, right? So I'm excited to have my buddy Kris Hochart here.
Hey.
And obviously my right hand, Brynn Rouse. And
Hi.
We're going to just have an open discussion. Brynn is better at asking questions than I am, Kris, so I want to make sure that she kind of moderates us a little bit.
Very good.
We're having fun with a podcast for the first time ever, too, so we're going to do a little YouTube video. We'll get this out on Instagram and Twitter and every vehicle we can figure out how to do this on,
Absolutely.
right?
And I'm taking pictures as we speak, so I can get these. Ta-da!
Well, how do you think we should start this? What do you think the starting point, Brynn, is of that process? And Kris, obviously, want lots of your input. But where do you think you start when it comes to getting a client to make a decision to buy a house and get them to the finish line? Where do we start?
We only have 1 hour. I think you could pack a month's worth of coaching into helping somebody get their client to the place where they feel extremely comfortable without having any sort of buyer's remorse, knowing they're pulling the trigger, and enjoying the process.
I would agree with that.
Because enjoying the process, I think, is what a lot of people forget or miss, and that's critical. I mean, that if you hate the process, then no matter how awesome the house is, it's going to suck when you move in. Like when you're closing, there's nothing you can do to overcome that. So.
It's funny that you say that. One of my calls I make at the end of every month is the honor calls a couple of days or a week later.
Right.
And one of the first questions I always ask is, hey, out of curiosity, how's the house going? And sometimes I'm sitting there like biting my tongue, crossing my fingers, because that's a landmine question.
It can
19 out of 20
Totally.
times it's a good answer. We're super excited. We moved in over the weekend. And then there's a 1 out of 20 times that it's one of those, well, we moved in and there was water everywhere on the ground. Something blew up when we moved in. It's like,
Sure.
Holy cow.
Sure. Or you're moving in, and this literally just happened. We had a house that was completely remodeled. The guy who did the remodel is excellent. He does excellent work in everything he does. Completely replaced the AC system. Uh-huh. They moved in. No AC.
No.
Welcome to Texas. It's only 100 degrees.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's 100 degrees outside. They're in the middle of moving in, and the agent's calling me saying, bro, like, where's the receipts from all the AC stuff? And so I'm calling the owner. Good news is, owner is awesome. Wanted to make sure he delivered a great product, and he said, you know what, I'm going to send the AC guy out there. Well, so I think they sent the home warranty guy out there, but if there was any problem with that, he said, I'll completely back it up. And he did. He wrote a check for $3,500 and made it right. So
That'll cause a little bit of buyer's remorse.
It could. But I'll tell you what, in this particular case, it was a great agent on the other side, and it really gave us a chance to both look like heroes for both the buyer and seller. So it was really good.
I love that.
Anyway, so how do you want to launch the process? Like, at what point are we going to pick up the introduction? You've got a client. Now what?
Yeah, let's talk about this. So, first of all, I think that we have to talk about getting the dirty connotation of being a closer out of the way. So I personally feel like closing is a good thing.
I was going to say, why is that dirty?
I feel like I would think, and I feel like when most people hear that they're a salesperson or they're going to be sold something,
used car salesman.
Yeah, it makes them, it kind of gets them a little bit uncomfortable. But here's where I think that comes from. I think it comes from bad salespeople. I think it comes from bad closers or people that maybe don't ever get to the close at all. And so I want to uncover that piece to start with, is really getting comfortable with the idea that closing is a good thing.
I think you might need to redefine close.
Okay.
Being sold is dirty. Nobody wants to be sold, right?
Right.
But if you're a consultant getting somebody to the close, your close may be, you're not ready to buy a house. That's a close.
I literally just said that in the parking lot.
Oh,
Literally.
I love that. Yeah.
That's a close. I mean, helping somebody get to the decision, you're closing you're closing the discussion, you're closing the deal, you're closing the chapter, right?
So
close isn't dirty, it's finality.
So I think that the close then is really about, well, first starting with the idea that you're only going to sell somebody or close somebody on really what's best for them.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And I think that's the place to start. Is really,
and even with that too, you have to add in the personalities too. I mean, at some point you got to talk about that, which I know you love talking about. But you got to make sure you're talking their language. You know, I have no problem with you, like in your words, selling me, because it saves me time. So if I trust you as a consultant, I mean, I value time as a deep personality. So
that's fair.
So if you say, if you do this, you can accomplish this, and as an investor, you can make this much money.
Sure. You
should buy it. You sold me, absolutely, and I appreciate that.
Okay.
But most of Americans are not wired that way, and so I could totally agree with you that connotation would be negative for sure.
Okay.
So so if we then have kind of decided that in order to be a good salesperson, in order to not make people feel sold, we have to really understand what they want and what they're trying to accomplish out of whatever capacity you're working with them in. How do you find out?
Right.
How do you find out what they need? How do you find out what they want? And take us through that process. Where do you start? And we'll kind of navigate through that, because I think that's really what we're trying to uncover is how do you help people get to the decision? How do you help them make a decision? So
ask lots of questions.
Lots and lots of questions.
Amen. Ask lots. In fact, number one weakness I see of, we'll call them salespeople.
Sure.
Number one thing I see in coaching is the average salesperson asks 3 or 4 questions, maybe. Ooh. The best salespeople, like you think about it, as a realtor, what would be the top 3 or 4 questions that every realtor, every one of your competitors always asks? 3 or 4 things. What would they be?
What do you want to buy? How much do you want to spend? And where do you want to live?
And every realtor on the planet asks that, right?
Yeah. And then they think they know what they want.
Right. And same thing in my world, right? I'm a lender. And so basically mine almost always comes down to 1 or 2 questions. What's your rate? What's your fees? Right?
Right, sure.
It's literally that simple. And so every other lender, basic salespeople only answer those 2 questions, right? Mm-hmm. So one thing that I'm a big believer in is what Kris just said, which is he who asks the most questions wins. And that's a win for the client as much as it is for the buyer, right? So how many questions out of curiosity do you, client and the salesperson, right?
Right.
So out of curiosity, how many questions do you ask in your process in the early part of getting to know somebody?
I'll be honest with you, Josh. I couldn't even begin to tell you how many questions, because every person's going to be different. Just like you and I are having a conversation right now. Our conversation could deviate from, okay, you're buying a house. Is this your first house? Mm-hmm. How many houses have you bought before? Oh, you bought a lot of houses before. Well, tell me about that. Tell me about your investment strategy. Why did you buy all those houses? Are you military? Have you moved a bunch of times? I'm going to ask so many questions just to understand the background of familiarity that you have before we even start talking about this purchase, because I want to know what your experiences have been like.
Right.
What have all those purchases been like? There's just a lot. So every person's going to be different. And the questions...
Do you change it based on personalities?
I do.
Okay.
I absolutely
do. That's why it in.
Yeah, I absolutely do, because there's some people are going to be feely, emotional. I'm not.
Just like
right?
me.
So I've really got to start curtailing my questions when I know this is a feeler. Mm-hmm. There are people that, I hope I don't offend anybody who's going to listen to this, but there's people that I'm like, woohoo, little wacky, that are all about the energy of the home and the aura. And I could go barf in a bucket every time I hear that. But at the same time, I do know there's something about an ambiance and a feeling and a lighting that create those different
feng
feelings.
Shui.
Whatever. Yes, absolutely.
I think Josh really knows what feng shui is. Let's just stop there for a second.
I don't know.
Of course I do. Ask me at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, those things will all change depending on the client. And I've literally gone from the feely person to another client who walked in, and I'm giving him my best customer service that I've got. I sit him down, I get him a menu. Would you like a beer? Would you like a glass of wine? Like, we're going to have a dialogue. Mm-hmm. And it's time for us to loosen up and have that dialogue. And he says, I don't want any of that. If you're offering me that, I think you already make too much money. Okay, let's just get down to brass tacks. What are we here to, you know what I mean? So for him, it's not going to be a feely conversation.
Right.
It's going to be straight up like nuts and bolts. This is in the toolbox.
When you're identifying what type of person you're working with, are you having those conversations in the beginning over the phone? And then so when you do get in front of them in person, you kind of know what you're dealing with? Or are these conversations first being had face-to-face, one-on-one?
For me, I think my building rapport is really important. You know what? This is telling, and there's probably some meat here to unravel. My process is going to have a little bit of dialogue over the phone first, just because you're not going to get me to drive across town for an appointment if I haven't gotten to know you a little bit over the phone, right?
Got it. Okay.
So for me, because that's a need that I have, I put that on other people. I want to make sure that they know why they're driving across town, that we've built some rapport ahead of time, that they're excited about what that appointment's going to bring. So I make a couple of promises on my initial phone call before they come into the office. And that is, I will promise them that they're going to have a comprehensive understanding of what the real estate market looks like in San Antonio so that they can make a great buying decision for them. That's a big promise, because I'm telling them they're going to have full market knowledge by the time they leave. The other promise that I make is we're going to create a process where they're not going to have any buyer's remorse, that they'll be able to move forward with the decision and buy something in confidence, not wondering if there was just one more house out there. So those two promises are something that intrigues them enough to make sure they don't want to miss that appointment.
I love that. I love that.
Well, what you're doing is you're basically putting the two biggest issues up on the table and talking about it openly before you even meet them.
Right.
I love that.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a question. I would love to hear more. So I think I understand. Well, tell me a little bit more about how you make sure that they're clear and confident about the market that we are in right now. What does that look like? What do you talk to them about? What do you tell them? Do you have stats? Do you have things you show them or prepare for them?
Absolutely. Okay. So if a buyer comes in, it just depends, remember, on who we're talking to, right? So if I'm sitting there talking to Josh is going to want to know how many properties are on the market, what does market inventory look like as far as how fast we absorb that market, how many what the average cost of a home is going for, what's the appreciation rate look like. Mama with 2.5 kids, a dog and a cat and a goldfish, and worried about preschool, doesn't care.
Don't care.
She just doesn't care. She really wants a good home. She wants to make sure that she's in a neighborhood that's going to be quote unquote safe. And there's certainly different things we have to talk about when we get into that side of it. So when I say a comprehensive understanding of the market in San Antonio, I mean according to what they want to know.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
I could talk forever and bore you to tears about stuff you don't care about.
Gotcha. So really tailoring what information you're going to provide them based on really what is going to get their ears to perk up.
Yep.
Sure.
I want to add this too, because I know that he does this because I've worked with him for so many years as well. It's something that we work on at our company quite a bit as well, which is regardless of where a conversation takes you, like you said, you might be more emotionally based or more logically based or time sensitive or money sensitive. The reality is that I know you do too, have some basic questions that you're always going to ask, period, no matter which way the conversation takes you. And that's a basic script that I think is super important. People think a script is you have to say this word after this word after this word.
Nope.
That's not the case. It should be a mental or a written
outline.
Bullet point outline of, hey, I've got this amoeba of a conversation going on, but no matter what, I'm going to cover number one before I cover number two, before I cover number three. And so as an example, just paint that picture, in my first pre-qualification appointment, which might be only 20 or 30 minutes, right? Some people will take 45 minutes, some people will take 10. What I do know for sure is I'm going to absolutely talk about their relationship with a referring partner. I want to make sure we do that.
Sure.
That they're in great hands if it's the right referring partner. Number two is I want to make sure that we go through their goals. And that's a list of questions. I mean, basics would be payment and cash and how long they keep the property for and what's more important, what's their hot button. But for sure, I'm going to cover that every time, regardless of where the conversation's taking me. I'm going to also make sure they qualify for their goals, right? Because I want to make sure that, the rubber meets the road and there's not an unrealistic expectation of a $1,000 payment on $1 million house. Number four is I'm going to go through talking about urgency, because I do think that it's a fire hot market right now.
Yep.
And that if you piddle around and wait too long, the house that you called about in the first place, that got you excited to buy a house, could be gone in a matter of 2 days, let alone 2 weeks, let alone 2 months. And with rates, depending on when you listen to this, rates are still historical lows. They have been for years. So the urgency of going out and buying while the iron's hot, I think, is super important. I mean, definitely covered that, which goes back to market indicators and why that would be the case. And then number 5 thing is I want to always clearly answer the question of why me? Because every buyer, every seller is asking a realtor and a lender in their mind or openly, why should I buy from you? Why you versus any other realtor, any other lender? And so regardless of what they ask, because I want to answer all their questions too, and regardless of how short or long the conversation is, I will not let that conversation end without going through those 5 as a basic bullet point. And you can build on and build on and build on from that. So I'm curious for you, if you were to say at a bare minimum, and I'm not talking like the average realtor, like we talked about, which is just where do you want to live, how much you want to spend.
Sure.
What would be those other important questions? Like you heard me say, I want to know who you're referred by because I want to know where I stand. I want them to know why to use me. I want them to talk about urgency. What would be the other key questions that you want to make sure you at least cover in that early meeting?
I've probably asked that, how did you hear about me? How did you find me? How did this conversation start before they've made it to my meeting? Like that's going to be on my phone call, right? So by the time they're in my office, I've already hit some of those basics. But the questions I'm going to be asking more is, it may sound extremely cheesy, but in my head, because I'm looking for their needs, right? So I'm basically going to hit forward. I'm going to tell me about your family, what's your occupation, what's your recreation, what are your dreams, and I'm basically going to hit that outline as to establishing the parameters of what it is they're looking for, so that I can dig deeper and learn more about each piece. So if you tell me that you've got family all over San Antonio, well, we need to talk about that because
where are you going to live?
Where are you going to live? Well, you can't live all over San Antonio.
Which parent do you like the most?
Right, exactly.
I was going to say which one helps the most.
There you go.
What does Thanksgiving and Christmas look like when you have to shuttle all over town, go into all the different parties? So we're going to have that discussion. In each one of those.
Your hair's taking straight up now.
Is it?
Oh yeah, we're on video too, so you got to fix your hair.
Sweet. All right. So we're going to ask.
You could just cut your hair. You know that, right?
Long hair, don't care.
No.
So
you can't cut his hair. He's not allowed.
We're going to dig deeper into each one of those. But another couple of questions that I ask that are really important to me are, what are you most afraid of in this process, and what are you most excited about?
Love that.
And I want to start with the most excited about because it's pretty easy. Well, I want to have home ownership. I'm tired of paying rent. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody walk in.
I want a pool to play in. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I won't buy a house without a pool. They're too expensive to build, so I'm going to buy a house that's already got one in it.
Yeah.
Rabbit trail, sorry. So then I'm going to ask biggest fear. Like, what are you really afraid of? And most of the time, a buyer doesn't have the same amount of fears, at least cognitively, that a seller does. A buyer is not thinking about their fears when they walk in to buy a house. They're thinking about all the blue sky and things they're excited about. But they're there. They are absolutely there. There's a fear of, am I buying at the right time? San Antonio is an increasing market. Did I already miss it? Should I bought in 2010? Is it going to crash tomorrow?
Can I afford it?
Can I afford the monthly payment? Maybe I should just keep paying rent. Can I... what else are we afraid of? We're afraid of...
A 30-year notice forever.
Oh, my gosh, it's so long.
It's so funny. People say that all the time. It's like, a 30-year note? I mean, I just don't know that I can commit for that long.
So you're saying you're going to die in this house. That's what you're telling me. Right?
Yeah, you can always sell
No,
it.
this is my first house. Okay, then don't worry about that.
Don't even worry about that.
Well, how about I'm afraid of the AC going out? I'm afraid that once I own this house, that I'm going to have some unexpected thing that I'm not aware of. I've heard San Antonio has foundation issues. I want to make sure that I don't buy something that's going to cost me $20,000 later on that I'm unaware of. I mean,
I'm afraid of what my friends and family will think about this decision.
Oh, that's a good one.
Comes up a lot.
Does that?
Absolutely.
Oh,
I'm afraid of what Daddy would think.
See, that normally comes when we do the inspection. Can I bring my dad? Can I bring my uncle Tim? Can I bring? I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go. So I also have a different market that I've grown to really love and appreciate, and that is I work with elderly. So I'm a SRES certified agent, and you wouldn't believe it. I only bring this up because we brought up the whole inspector and bringing Dad and Uncle Tim, right? The same thing happens with elderly.
Oh yeah, they bring in their child.
It's the whole family, right? First time home buyers and last time home buyers are
think about that.
Are super similar. So something to think about. And I don't know much about what you do in the elderly side of it, but there's a whole nother myriad of things in finance, like the reverse mortgages and how all that stuff works. So
I had a 95-year-old guy that said, "You're going to give me a 30-year mortgage? I can't pay that back." I said, "Exactly, not your problem."
Not your problem. So let me ask you this. So whenever you meet with a client and you say, let's talk about your fears. What if they don't have any? What if they are, or they can't think of any, and they're just kind of like, I got nothing. I'm just really excited.
Sure.
Do you
I'm not a fear monger. I'm not trying to create fears where there aren't any. Absolutely.
But do you go ahead and cover some of the things that you hear most commonly, so that way when they do come up, at least they're a little prepared? Or is that something like, if you're happy, let's keep you that way. I don't want to plant anything in your head.
Right. And I tend to do that. So what it'll sound like when I'm having the discussion is it's going to say, hey, you know what? If you're not afraid of anything right now, that's great. I'm typically not afraid of much in life either until I find myself in a really scary situation. So as we go through this process, if you find yourself in something that you consider a scary situation, please
let me know.
Just put your hand up. Just be like, hold on. Yeah. Wait a minute. No problem. And I will absolutely pause and take time, and we'll dissect it and make sure we put that to bed before we move on.
You could be a voice actor.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you need to read scripts. I think you'd do very well at it. Next Lion King 5 or whatever's coming up.
Okay.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so basically what I heard is that in that first initial face-to-face meeting, we're going to cover Ford. Mm-hmm. So for those of y'all that didn't catch that, it's a very common script or formula that people use in sales, which is family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. Mm-hmm. So kind of follow that, figure out really what we're working with as far as them as a couple, them as a human, and then really go into excitements and what their motivators are, and then uncover any fears.
That's right.
Okay.
So that's my basic, my 6-step questions. And then I'm going to get into the buying process.
Okay.
When I go through the buying process, this gives me an opportunity to show that I'm a really good listener. Right? Yep. Yes. So we're going to start by showing you every single house in San Antonio, and I literally say it that way to overwhelm them so that they don't want to cheat on me later. I don't want you going to Zillow, Trulia, all the other hot pads, whatever, looking for houses. I want you to really trust this process and use my MLS system because it's the most current relevant information that you can have access to. So we'll start with that whole process, and I'll literally say, here's how many houses are for sale in San Antonio right now. Right. And I'll click the button, and it'll come up and on a live screen, it'll say 8,792 homes. Okay?
So that's literally every
single house. Home. Yeah, okay. And they may even include stuff in Corpus Christi. I mean, I've seen things in the MLS that are not just in San Antonio. So that number's big and staggering. Yeah. And then we say, okay, we're going to see 8,782 homes. Mm-hmm. Okay? How are we going to do that? We're going to start by weeding out the things that are absolutely off the table. Yep. Okay? And only absolutely off the table. If it's a marginally might be accepted, I still want it to show up. And so I push their limits as far away as I can to make sure that I don't throw any possibilities out, that possible homes away that they would consider. And then by the end of that meeting, I really have taken away any temptation to go anywhere else because they know that process is honed in and customized to them for their results.
Well, I want to dive into this piece, if that's okay, Brynn, because I got to experience it once before too. And I'd love to kind of do a live play with the viewers because the title of this is how do you help your clients make a decision. And I think it's the reason why I said it's a win-win on both sides is because it's good for the buyer to buy what they want to buy or sell what they want to sell, but also from a salesperson's point of view, you want to do it efficiently. Mm-hmm. And from a buyer's point of view and a seller's point of view, it needs to be efficient as well, right? Time is money, and people only have so many weekends in the summer if they're trying to move before school starts. And I think that this is a source of a lot of frustration in real estate in their interactions with clients because, the unrealistic expectations possibly never set on one side or the other, and or no clear process to drive towards an end result that both people are excited about.
Sure.
Is lacking. And just as an observation, working with you for 12 years now, I think it is, I know that you're one of those people that you don't take a lot of time to show people. You actually don't show properties after 5 o'clock unless it's your best friend's mother and your wife's out of town with the kids, right?
Right.
I mean, like, and that's and what
I'm done at 5.
What I hear every day in real estate is, I have to show after on the weekends, and I have to show after hours, and I've seen you do this process so well that you can, in a very short order, get somebody to help, to the right decision for themselves. And I think we need to walk through that process, because whether you have a cutoff of 5 o'clock, obviously, I'm a workaholic. I'll work past 5, and I know lots of agents will work past 5 and on the weekends too, and need to for their businesses.
Well, and that's specific to me.
Yeah, it's a choice
at this time of my life.
Right.
So our friend Tad, he's empty nested. It doesn't matter. Yeah. He's not going to be doing anything at 6 o'clock anyway. Right. He'd rather be out there showing a house because he can. And when I'm empty nesting, I may change my values too. Right now, I've got little ones at home that see their dad between 6 and 8, and I'm not going to cheat on my children with my work. Is really what that boils down to.
I love that. Yeah. So let's talk about that process then. Okay. So can we role play? Do you want to role play with Kris? Do you want me to role play with Kris?
I almost wish I had a computer to make this work. But I do want to say one more thing just to drive home your point that you just said, and that is right time investment. Okay, right time investing. And meaning that I'm going to invest the right time.
With the right people?
No. Up front now.
Oh, got it.
Because my time spent with you now, even if it's a 2-hour meeting in my office, is way better than 2 days of driving around looking at properties.
Oh, I love that.
I love that.
So spend the time up front answering the right questions up front so that we don't have to be inefficient later, because later on the boat's sailed. You've missed it.
Well, and don't you think too, and speaking directly to that, the more houses you get out there and show them, it is time consuming for you. It's time consuming for them, and everything starts to run together. And now they can't make a decision.
They're frustrated. I'll tell you right now, I see 5 homes, I'd be super bored real fast.
Yeah. I mean, it's very hard to remember all of that.
Yep.
So I almost equate it to how we structure our system from the mortgage perspective. We do a lot of work up front with documentation, and let's run credit, and we got to talk through all this stuff. We need for you to come in. We need to understand your goals. What are you trying to accomplish? Let's get all that out of the way.
Yep.
So that way, when you find the house, boom, you pull the trigger. That piece is already taken care of. I love that, but I've never heard it referred to as right time investing. Right time investing. I love that.
Would you agree that most people in our industries on both sides do exactly the opposite?
I would, and I don't think they mean to. I was talking to Brynn the other day about the few times that I've screwed up and not done it. It's because I think I'm doing. We can talk about it.
That's what we need to do. We definitely do need to talk about that.
We do need to talk about it. It's when you make a decision outside of that system, and it's for good-natured reasons. But it's just a terrible decision, and it communicates all the wrong things. So on that, on an easy layup, an agent's excited. They've got a client that wants to go buy a house. The client's excited. They're excited. We're all excited. We all lose our minds, and we all go do stupid things that we don't, because we don't stick to the process and sit down and go through the system.
Or create a process in the first place.
Or create the process. That's right. So if you think about it, we're all excited. Oh my gosh, we're all excited. Let's go look at houses. I don't want to sit in an office for 2 hours and lose the excitement. Right? Because it's the work that we have to do is the right time investment that we need to spend right now, but it's not nearly as much fun as going and driving around and looking at houses and swinging into Starbucks and buying a $6 coffee.
I think there's probably a fear of, if I make these people do this, what if they talk to another agent that is willing to hop in the car immediately? And
there's a little bit of a fear there, right?
Yeah,
why?
But why?
Because I guarantee you that by the time we've sat there and I've repeated back to you in this buying process the things that you told me were important to you, you're going to think I care more about you than somebody that just wanted to go show you a house, right? Because that's how you get sold.
Well, I'd also argue that this is a piece where, because we talked about this in our warm-up, this is where every client is not meant to work with you.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Like it's a personality match. It's a time match. It's a time of life match.
Absolutely.
Right? And I see just tons of people that chase their tails because they're working with the wrong clients. Yes. And I'm not saying, don't do everything you can for somebody, but sometimes the best thing you can do for them is give them away, like free willy. Yeah, free willy. Let them go work with somebody else. And there's a lot of truth to that, because if they expect you to be able to answer phones or text back at 8 o'clock at night and you're not able or willing to because of children or whatever else, we're then choosing to give bad customer service to make $1.
That's right.
Right? Mm-hmm. And that's not okay. So it's a win for the client to be set free. So, I'd love for your parameters and yours as well. I'll share mine. When do you decide it's not the right person? Like, how early in this process do you set somebody go, or do you wait till you've already shown for 10 days and you feel obligated to keep on going because I've already invested 10 days into this process?
That's right.
Yes. Oh, this is like the hardest question
right?
ever.
So when do you let them, like, how early do you try to recognize that, or do you think you can recognize a bad fit?
Oh, I do it in the very beginning.
Okay.
So in that first meeting, when we're sitting and setting our expectations, so we go through this whole buyer process, I'm going to tell them up front, I only show properties between 9 and typically 4:30, because I need to be able to beat that traffic and get home. Dinner's at 6. Come hell or high water, dinner's at 6, and I don't want to be late for dinner. Yeah. Right. And then I don't make it about food. I really do tell them that I have 3 children, 12, 10, and 8, that need their father. And I can't let the media of the world parent my children more than I have an opportunity to do so. And I only get to see them between 6 and 8, which is bedtime. So after that, if they don't like that, what cold-hearted SOB doesn't like that? So if they don't like that, and they're going to need to look at homes, and there are some real reasons.
People without kids sometimes don't care.
Or doctors.
Yeah, that's true.
That have to be in the hospital and can't check phones and can't do whatever.
Teachers.
Teachers can't take days off work to go show houses. So if that's the case and they need to be shown in the evenings, then I will set somebody up with a different agent in my office. I've got people that I've bought Red Wagon cars for that can go just be a showing agent for me. I didn't used to have that. And that would have to be a referral. And I would just refer them to somebody else who's going to be absolutely kind and courteous for the time that they need to spend, because I can't. It's not going to be me.
So outside of showing, what else would be we're not a good fit? Because you said time is for sure one you brought 3 times, but separative time ability, what else is a hard stop?
It really does boil down to time for me. So I have a lot of responsibilities in running my brokerage. We do a lot of property management. We do a lot of investor home buying.
Right.
So if you come in and you want to buy a unicorn,
right,
I may or may not decide that I have the time to work with you to help you buy that unicorn property. If I really like you and it's a really intriguing unicorn, it may be worth the entertainment.
We know you would do it for sure.
He can be persuaded.
What about you with referring partners, Brynn? At what point do you decide it's not a good fit for us? What are those, separate time? What are the other things you think of?
I think of an unequal partnership. So if there's a realtor, if there's a business partner of any kind that views the lender or the lending piece as less important, or as us being subservient to them, that really rubs me in a very wrong, because I firmly believe that we are all in this together, and there are so many people and parties to the transaction, and not a single transaction can be completed without every single one of the players. And so that's a pretty big deal for me if I feel that subservient treatment, I guess. The other thing is, and it really kind of ties into this, is people that want me or want my team to do crazy things for them to help increase their business. I want to be careful what I say because I know there are certain times and places that we can help. But again, it goes back to we're equals and I want to be a partner. So how can I don't want to ever feel like I'm being used because we are doing a large piece of every transaction, and that's giving people money to actually buy the house. Right. And I don't like that when that goes overlooked.
I got another deal killer for you.
Okay.
If you lead with negotiating my fee, we're not a good fit.
Ooh,
that's interesting. Yeah.
If you walk into my office and you're like, well, I can go to ABC Real Estate and they'll give me a rebate of half the commission at closing, I'm going to say you should probably go to ABC Real Estate.
Got it.
Because I'm not interested.
Yeah, so for me, first one that came to mind is unwilling to follow our process, right? Because we can give really great customer service to the referring partner and to the client when people follow the process.
Yeah.
And every time we break the rules and like, well, except for you, we'll just do this in this shorter time frame, or we'll do this for you and after hours or whatever, then somehow, some way, a ball is going to be dropped because it's not what we do every day. We have a process that works. And it's like
bingo.
When you go to McDonald's, and I don't want to compare any of our businesses to McDonald's, but it's really clear. Like there's a hamburger guy and there's a fry guy and there's a cashier and there's a manager, and they don't do each other's jobs. Mm-hmm. And they do their job very, very well. And that's, I think, super important. And it can be a team of 1 or a team of 10, but there's got to be a process, because the only way you can create a consistent output is with consistent input. And so to me, the deal killers are just don't want to follow the process, which just doesn't work.
I think it's interesting, and this is a perfect spinoff as to what our conversation was that Kris alluded to earlier, was typically we find ourselves making these concessions to our process for our VIPs.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Our mom or sister or brother or best friend.
The worst deals you can do are for your family members.
But think about why that might be. Is because, well, I will go out of the system, out of my process for you because I love you and I want to give you special treatment. So like you said, the intentions are all right. They're all good, and they're made with the right mindset. But what we're doing is saying, I am intentionally willing to screw this up for you.
That's exactly right. Because if we've gone through a process of establishing best practices, and I know what the best practice is, then anything else isn't the best. So when I take you out of best practice because you're my best friend, I just said, you don't deserve the best.
Right.
And it's unfortunate, and I'll tell you that this is a real life story. It happened. The gentleman sitting to my right is extremely busy. And so when I tell him, hey, we need to sit down and go through the buyer criteria and start selecting what needs to happen, Josh, Mr. You should always follow the process, doesn't have 2 hours to come and sit in my office and follow the process.
You never demanded it. It's not
what a beautiful segue, by the way.
It is hilarious. It really is hilarious. And you know what? I didn't demand it. Right. You know why?
Because I was your friend.
Because you're my friend.
Yeah.
And so what happened?
It didn't work.
It didn't work. It was a grueling process, right?
How long was that process?
Oh,
2 years.
Whatever it was.
You should have fired me many, many times.
Oh my gosh. But you're my friend. So it was worth the torture, right? No, it's terrible. Because reality is, there were so many different things that didn't go according to the process with Josh when he bought his home. And one of those is just, where do you want to live? One person wants to live on the northwest side of town, but Christy's got to live on the northeast side of town because she doesn't want to live too far away from her parents. But then eventually we're going to live to the north. I mean, that right there.
So what you're saying is the system you built was because of the Sigmans?
No, the system definitely existed. I just didn't demand that they sit through it.
And I'm guilty of breaking the rules too, probably with your loans.
Well,
we would stop there.
Stop there. Halt. Can that be edited?
Yeah. So anyway.
That's awesome.
No, I think that's, so the systems are built for a reason. We use them, and then we pick our favorite people.
And we bastardize our processes for the best people in our lives. And it's terrible.
So I think this is a good segue, because I want to go through that process that should have happened. So maybe you should practice on me, because then I might have been able to help you a little bit better. But
cool.
In theory, and this isn't a theory, I'm a coach nationally, and I study real estate teams that do a really great job nationally in both service and in volume. And what's crazy to me, or interesting to me, not crazy to me, is that big or small teams, those that are most productive, show the fewest homes.
Correct.
But they get those homes in the client's hands very quickly. So their conversion ratio is very high. Their customer service rating is very high. So they're referred very often because they had a great experience, because it didn't take 2 years, right?
That's right.
And then the flip side is, I can hear 100 agents in my ear saying, if my client wants to see 100 homes, I'm going to see 100 homes, right? I'll do whatever it takes because they're my one client of the week or month, right? And I would argue that's poor client service and customer service, right? So let's walk through the right process.
Sure.
Of, I love that you said, let me show you all. So show me all 12,000 homes or 8,000 homes. Walk me through, ask me the questions, show me all 8,000 homes.
Okay, so we're going to sit down in front of the computer. I'm going to bring up the actual MLS entry data form that would be on my screen. I'll put it up on their screen. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes this will be something I do through an HDMI just to put it up on a TV, or I'll put it up on a separate screen that they can look at in front of them. And then I'll only leave active and price change, back on market, new, and I will take out the active options because those houses are already under contract. And I'll take out the RFRs, right of first refusals. But in the process of doing so, I'm going to tell them what I'm doing on every step of the way.
Okay. So
yes, this house is active option. It already has a contract on it. They're in the option period. It could fall apart and come back. So while it's arguably not sold yet, you could see it. Somebody else has already got first dibs. Do you want to waste your time on those or wait until it comes back on the market and then it'll auto-populate into our system? Okay. Most of the time, they're going to say, I don't want to waste my time on something that's already been selected. Okay, so I'll take off those and I'll click Show Homes or Find Homes or OK or whatever the button is. I don't have it in front of me. And it'll bring up whatever the total number of homes that are available in the MLS system right now. And I think the last time I did this was 9,270 homes, whatever it was, 73. Okay. So out of those 9,773. Okay. Out of those homes, you can't buy all those homes, right? You see that they're there. Right now we see them. They're on the screen. You can't buy all those homes. What is the first thing that is going to limit you on your ability to buy those? Price. Okay, cool. So have you already been pre-qualified? We already know this because we had it in discussion. So in this case, you've been pre-qualified. Mm-hmm. And in your pre-qualification, how much did the lender tell you that you could spend? $500,000?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask you another question. Out of that 500, did you come to that number based off cash availability and what you're putting down, or did you come to that number based off your monthly payment? Your monthly payment. So you are drilled in on payment.
Yes.
And what is your monthly payment going to be based off what you're going to put down at current rates?
$3,000.
$3,000 a month. Okay. So I want you to know that I'm going to eat today. And I do not need to sell you this house in order for me to eat today, okay? So when I ask you this question, it is not self-serving. I don't want to eliminate anything off the table that you may end up wanting to see. Okay? Could you afford $3,100?
Yes.
Okay. So if the property, I'm just going to throw this out there, if the property is $550,000 and you had to stretch your monthly payment to get to $3,200 or $3,300, but the house is freaking perfect. It's perfect. It's got everything you wanted and stuff you didn't even realize you could have.
Yep.
Would you want to see it?
I feel uncomfortable over $3,200.
Oh, 3,200. Okay, so
anything over 32, like I could do 31, but if it got to 32, I probably wouldn't want to do it, even though I could do it.
Even if it was perfect.
Nope.
Okay, fine. That's great. Like this has a Tesla charger in the garage. Perfect, right?
Good.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to change your price.
I like diesel trucks.
Okay, whatever. You did want to test drive a Tesla.
I was going to say, I think that's changing. As from what I heard, it's changing.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and change your price that you're willing to search to $530,000,
okay,
which is going to allow us to get to that price point at $3,200, which we know is going to make you uncomfortable. So I only want you to look at those right now as it's not eliminated.
Got it.
It doesn't mean we're choosing it. Now, on the bottom side, we know that there's a price that you're just not willing to live in a house that is cheaper than blank. And I don't care what that number is.
Right.
I will sell you the cheapest house that you want to buy if you want to go see it and you think that's the perfect home because of whatever reason you decide. That's great. What's the floor that I'm going to put in here?
Just looking online, I probably wouldn't end up less than $350 is what I guess.
$350. Uh-huh. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and take your $350, but I'm going to stretch it just a little bit. I'm going to put it at $300 if that's okay with you, just because I want to leave a little margin. Okay. You may feel like I'm totally wasting your time by doing that, but I think we'll eliminate it for other reasons. Okay. So now that I've put those two price parameters in there, search. Look at this. We just returned our results back. We've already looked at 7,000 homes. There are only 2,000 homes remaining in that window.
I love that. That's very smart.
Doesn't that feel good that we just looked at 7,000 homes? We don't have to do that again. And that was so fast. Okay. So the next thing that's really important, especially with the buyer to my right.
Location.
Okay. Where do you want to live?
Garden Ridge, for sure.
You have to be in Garden Ridge.
My wife would leave me if I didn't live there.
So it is Garden Ridge. Why is that such a driving force?
Because it's the halfway point between my office, so I'm not willing to go further, and it's the halfway point between my office and my mother-in-law, who helps with the kids, and I think my wife likes her more than me anyways.
Okay, very good.
Probably so.
All right, so Garden Ridge, but there's lots of areas that are in that halfway point, so I could just look in Garden Ridge if you want me to. However, I don't want to leave anything on the table that we haven't really discussed.
Got it.
So can I just say that this is more of a radius?
That's fair.
A radius issue.
Probably as far west as Bulverde, as far east as 35, as far north as Schoenthal, as far south as 1604.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to bring up this map.
Okay.
And while we're looking at the map screen, I'm going to put my center right here on Garden Ridge.
Okay.
And I'm going to draw this radius until all of a sudden you...
Stop.
Okay, done. So search. Guess what we just did?
You limited a lot more.
We just looked at 1,500 more homes.
Boom.
There are only 500 homes in that price range in that 3-mile radius.
Perfect.
Right. 500 homes is still a lot of homes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Takes
now...
about 2 years to see.
Right.
So now that we've looked at, it's 9,200 homes, and we're down to 500 homes, we know that there's other needs that we have. You just mentioned that you have kids.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to suggest that there's things in your lifestyle that are going to be really important when it comes to kids and family. Can you lead me into some things that are really important to you on the home?
Sure, great schools for sure. I want land. I want to be able to pee in the backyard and not see my neighbor. That's really important.
That's unique.
Right. Mm-hmm. Although I've heard that before. I want to have a pool either currently or a space to put a pool in.
Okay. So you could still put one in.
One of the two. Yep.
All right.
And one story. I mean,
one
we have
story.
Young kids, and I don't want my kids falling downstairs.
So there's no stairs.
I don't want them.
That is non-negotiable.
For me, yes, that's correct.
Okay, fantastic. If that's a non-negotiable, I want to start with that one because everything else seems like negotiable. We can negotiate a pool. Okay.
Yep.
I can't negotiate a pool. It has to be in mine, just to make sure that's a clear distinction. So I'm going to start with one stories. Guess what? We're down to 150 homes.
Boom.
Got it.
Because there is a lot of multi-level houses. One-story homes are more expensive to build because you have a bigger slab for all the same things. You can go 2 stories for cheaper, right? You get more square footage for less money. So we just got down to 150 houses. That's still a lot of homes. Sure. By the way, I don't even think there really would be that many. I'm just leading this on so you can see the process. When it comes to schools, I wanted to circle back to that one because you brought that up and you mentioned your kids, you mentioned Garden Ridge. Do you know the schools in those different areas, or are you just that area is pretty good?
My wife is really good friends with a couple of great teachers at Garden Ridge Elementary. That's why it came up.
Oh.
Yeah, but Comal County is where we want to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're good. It doesn't have to be Garden Ridge Elementary.
As long as Comal County. Yeah.
As long as it's Comal County.
Yep.
Okay, fine. So we'll put that Comal County ISD in here. And I just want to look at something real quick. I know this might shock you, but some realtors are really lazy. I know.
Unbelievable.
You didn't see that coming.
Unbelievable. Yep.
So when they put a listing in the computer, they don't always look up the information that needs to be added to that listing. And they'll just take this cheat and they'll say, call district. So if they put that in there, unfortunately, it would eliminate your house by me reducing it to that criteria. And since I know people are lazy, but you might still want to buy that lazy realtor's house, I want to leave it in. Make sense?
Yep.
And so tell me about this. How many kids do you have?
3.
You have 3.
Yep.
Boys, girls?
Yes.
Okay. So
all the above.
They're probably not all going to share a room?
No. So we probably need 4 bedrooms.
4 bedrooms. Okay. Very good. I know you're super successful. Do you turn it off when you get home?
Oh, so you're saying I need a 3-car garage so I can escape. That's true.
Or an office.
Or an office.
Office or a kid's playroom, yes.
Or a man cave.
And a man cave.
To lock the kids
And
in the playroom so that you don't have to use the office?
Sure.
Okay.
In a doghouse.
So what I'm really asking is doghouse. What I'm really asking for is what are the needs that you're going to have in your rooms? 4 bedroom, fine. We'll start with that. So I go to 4 bedrooms. We just eliminated 30 homes that were 3 bedrooms. We haven't even
3-car garage.
You have to have a 3-car garage?
Absolutely, 100%.
Oh, you know what? That's funny. Me too.
I can't not have that. That's the one place I can keep it organized for the most part. That's my space at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, all right.
That's where my toys go.
Okay. You did say something about land in
an acre.
An acre? Okay. I haven't circled back to land yet, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put in your 3-car garage. And I think you guys get the point of this.
Yeah.
So I don't need to keep going with it. And
how many? Here's what I want to finish up there. So I love it, and you're just going to keep going. At what point, like how many houses are you trying to narrow it down to where you literally think, based on my process?
2 standards of achievement.
Okay.
Number 1, it has to be under 100. Okay. And the real answer is to as few as possible with the non-negotiables only.
I love that. So you're trying to figure out how many non-negotiables in general, like what would be a goal in a conversation for your process?
So if we did this process and we got down to the absolute non-negotiables, and by the way, I'm going to push you on land, right? You say an acre, I say bullshit. If it's 3/4 of an acre and it backs up to a green belt, are you good?
Absolutely.
Okay, right. So
I know for sure my family is 3-car garage, 1-story, wood burning fireplace for my wife is super important.
Okay.
Open floor plan, and I don't want to see my neighbors. Actually, that's my wife's.
Okay.
But that would be the non-negotiables.
Okay, so on that fireplace, you see, I'm going to push your non-negotiables. On that fireplace, you said you were willing to put in a pool. If it didn't have a pool and you were going to do an outdoor wood burning fireplace in your outdoor living area, would that qualify?
My wife would not buy it if there's not a wood burning fireplace.
Inside the house.
Absolutely.
I love that non-negotiable. That's what I'm talking about. So we're going to get down to whatever that number is.
Which at the time was like 5 or 7.
That's about right.
Yeah.
With those non-negotiables, and we'll go look at those. Guess what ends up happening? We look at those 5 and you either buy a house or you tell me, one of my non-negotiables, I guess, is maybe a little bit negotiable. That's your only choice.
Or does it ever come up when you realize that you have a non-negotiable that you didn't know about?
For sure.
Sure, that happens. Absolutely, that happens. Okay. So I'm going to give you a perfect example. That 3-car garage, non-negotiable. The 2 houses that I bought with my wife that we've lived in, no garage.
But you had an area to build a
I do have an area to build a garage.
So there's a
the first house we
solution.
bought has no garage and no place to build it. The next house I bought had 4 acres. I have plenty of place to build a garage should I choose to do so.
Right.
No garage. And it was non-negotiable. So that's just what happens, right? What happens is we go out, we look at the 5 houses, and it's either this is the one or it's not there. And then you have 2 options. You either have to change a non-negotiable or wait.
Or third is buy.
That's what I said.
Right. Buy.
You're either going to buy the house or you have 2 options.
Right. That's right.
So
that's excellent. And so how long would you say that piece of the process, this whittling, takes? Like done right on average.
Right.
Longer, shorter, but on average, what does it take to do it the right way?
I honestly, if the process was finished in an hour, I feel like, then we have to, I feel like I have to spend at least an hour and a half. Because if I got done in an hour, I would feel like I was cheating them. I was leaving something out. Like I really want to deliver the full value. The value may be there, and I just feel like it went too quickly. So
that's interesting because if you go back to the 2 promises he made up front, this is how you're fulfilling one of the 2 promises is this piece.
Mm-hmm.
Very smart.
And the other one is making sure that I understand what they want to understand about the real estate market and making sure that's been delivered. So, okay. So to answer your question, it typically takes an hour and a half. It has taken as long as 3.5 hours when I'm dealing with 2 clients that are not on the same page. Oh. When husband and wife don't want the same thing.
Yeah, it makes sense.
That's when, and you think the wife always buys the house, but it's not always true. Sometimes there are just non-negotiables that the husband's got. I personally think Elizabeth and I would be really terrible to represent.
For sure.
We would be terrible to represent.
Because of differences in non-negotiables?
Because she doesn't articulate as well the reasons that she might not like a house. So we're looking at...
It just doesn't feel right.
That's like my wine. That's like my wife for sure.
Right. Like we want to remodel our house. Why? Well, because every other $800,000 house out there that we look at, she's like, I'm like, it's a freaking $800,000. What's
Find
wrong
something
with
nice about it.
Exactly.
Right.
So she and I would probably kill each other with our realtor, and that would be tough because I'm very clear on what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And articulate it. Unapologetically. I don't like this house because.
Right. And she doesn't articulate the things, but she knows what she does and doesn't like. And so here I am trying to figure out what it is that she's not articulating to me so that I can find it.
Is there a way I'm just curious, like your woman's intuition here, because I know my wife struggles with the same thing for sure. Like ask the question of, what do you think of the house? The answer is always, oh, it's nice.
Oh, no. I have a process for that.
I was going to say,
every
I would
single
really
house.
struggle with that because I am more of a it just feels right. Therefore, I like it and want it.
Okay,
Right.
so
That's literally how I bought our house.
the process that we do when we walk through a house, and I did do it with you. Every single house, I need you to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I'm going to ask you on every single house, do you want to buy this house? And there's 2 reasons why I ask both of them. And I tell them at that meeting before they leave what to expect on their next meeting. Because I need to ask the question, do you want to buy this house? And I don't ever want them to feel like I'm pushing them. I might be pushing them, but I don't want them to feel that way.
They shouldn't feel it, yeah.
Right? So if I've told
It
them
goes
up
back
front,
to you're helping them make a decision. That's the key.
that's right. So if I tell them up front, I'm going to ask you on every single house if you want to buy the house. Now they don't feel like I'm pushing them into the decision. Does that make sense?
I actually love that.
Okay. The other reason
that.
I ask on the scale of 1 to 10 is because there's 2 different parts of your brain working with both of those questions. The question on do you like this house or rate this house on a scale of 1 to 10, you are looking at it as an analytical response to the property. Yes, I think this house is a 9. Do you want to buy this house? No, I really don't because.
Yep.
So I get a logical response and an emotional response. Does
I
that
love
make
that.
sense?
Yep, I absolutely do.
I've had people say this house is a 3. You would assume
They
you
wouldn't
don't
wanna
want to
buy
buy a 3.
Right.
Do you want to buy this house? Absolutely. I can make this house a 10.
I love that answer.
It's got the right bones. It's got the right structure. It's a piece of crap right now, but man,
I
it's going
love
to
it.
be awesome. Yeah.
I love
In
that.
fact, that's the house that my wife and I live in now. It was a 3. It was a pig farm.
Yeah.
Wow.
And my wife and I'm like
It is
looking
totally a 10 now.
it
gonna
will
be.
be when I
It's
finish
about
the
to be.
remodel.
When
Yeah.
you get your garage, right?
Well, yeah. Pouring concrete today, by the way.
Are you really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pouring
Congratulations.
concrete today.
It's
yeah.
only taking you 10 years. I
I
love
know.
it.
That's awesome.
Are we going to do
Thanks for that,
Oktoberfest
Josh.
again?
You know, I need to.
It's your due.
I am
this
due.
October.
Need to throw a party.
I want to dive into that little piece one more time, or one more thing as far as getting somebody to make the decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I see a lot, and I struggle with it, like trying to give people advice because it's just so clear to me, is the idea of, why should I not use a Redfin or a Zillow or these discount, whatever realtors that are available online now, right? They'll do it for 1%, you'll do it for 3%. And one of the reasons, going back to value and getting what you're worth, right, is, in my opinion, this is the kind of stuff that is valuable to justify 3% because you save me time, energy, money. On top of that, we'll talk about negotiating and stuff like that, but there's lots of other reasons that are separate to that. And my point is that, let's just say that on average, most realtors give up a couple $100 of something, right? Bottom line is that, let's just say for easy numbers, 3% is the average commission. On San Antonio's average is $250,000. I know you can equate the numbers anywhere in the country, but that's a $7,500 commission, right? And I do loans for a living, and I look at tax returns every single day. And what I see is that doctors and lawyers don't make $7,500 a transaction, right?
Sure.
And I don't see the average agent or lender or salesperson, for that matter, giving doctor-level advice, lawyer-level advice, right? And so the question of, do you want to buy the house and why, is one of those things that you're helping somebody make a decision. That this is what this conversation is all about, which is, if you don't pry and get to a clean yes or a clean no, I think that's a key word, a clean yes or clean no,
Yep.
Yes.
then you're not doing, either of you, the buyer, seller, or the agent or loan officer, you're not doing anyone any favors. Because if I can get a yes, I want to, are you sure? Yes, because A, B, C, D, and E, it's a 9 out of 10, or it's a 3, but I can make it a 10. That's a clean yes.
Yep.
And a no, the let me think about it. If you let somebody walk away, think about it, it's not helping them.
No.
Right? So I totally appreciate that, Kris. What is it that you'd like to think about so I can make sure I give you all the information, because I must have missed something.
Sure.
Right?
Yes,
Because
totally.
if I'm out with a realtor and the realtor says, hey, dude, I told you up front that this is a seller's market, and if we can find an 8.5 or better on your scale, not my scale, on your scale, we got to make an offer, because that house will be gone in 60 seconds, which happens every day here, in most top markets.
It just happened to me on
Right?
Friday. Yep.
Then I'm going to be pissed off at you because you didn't help me make my decision. I waited overnight. I went back to the house that I looked at 1,000 homes, and now that house is gone.
Yep.
So
gone,
I'm irritated. And same thing with, if it is a no, well, why is it a no? Because if I don't dig enough to uncover, like you just did, are you sure like the wood burning fireplace really is a non-negotiable, or like inside for sure? If you never ever ask that question, like you've shown 100 beautiful homes, but you never get to that, just happens to be one of the non-negotiables of a buyer, then you're going to unknowingly keep on wasting everyone's time because you'll keep on showing the houses because we didn't drive to the no. It's okay to get there. I don't expect a yes on a fraction of anything that we do sell, refinances, purchases. I don't expect a yes, right? But I expect a clean yes or clean no, because if I can do that, I can learn from it and I can help that client to the next step, which is exactly why we arrived at. I told you earlier in this podcast that, I literally talked a client into saying no right now. We're going to wait 6 months because of different variables.
Yes.
But it's because I wanted to understand what the real hot buttons were. And then I was able to give professional advice because I really knew their clean yeses and nos and why. So I could say, hey, then right now is not your time.
Right. Absolutely.
But that's worth 3%. Like as a consumer, to me, that's worth 3%. Right. And I think that people need to hear that loud and clear because they sidestep that all the time. It's, I don't want to push. I don't want to feel too pushy. I don't want to be that salesperson. I want to be construed as whatever negative connotation. So you'll think about it. Okay, yeah, just get back to me whenever. I'll just sit by my phone and hope and pray.
Well, and the other thing that happens too is, as a general rule in sales, the longer the sales process, the lower the conversion. And so the thing that goes along with lower conversion is not a great, the relationship's not going to be as great as it could be.
Yep.
Everybody's going to have this sour taste in their mouth. They're ready to be done with this process because they were excited 6 months ago. They're not anymore.
Yep. Right.
And you lose the sale altogether. And
you got to step further, the referring partner. Like if there was a past client that referred you because they had a great experience and then that person has a bad experience and they finally buy a new house with somebody else. And then the client says, hey, did my buddy take great care of you? And say, actually, we went with somebody else. You just stopped future referrals from that partner as well.
Gosh,
that past client as well.
Such a good point.
That's expensive.
Yeah.
It is expensive. So a couple of things before we move on from that. One thing that I noticed during this role play was your matching of your questions and your responses to his. So Josh is obviously a high D personality. Got some I in there too, right?
Sure.
So, he wants...
I have feelings.
You have feelings. One thing about I's though is we all, I'm a high I, and I know you're a high I. You've definitely got I. A lot of times people will associate that I as just happy-go-lucky all the time, and just it's all fluff. And I want to point out that I's want to feel like they're what they're saying and what their ideas and their thought processes, they want them to feel validated, and they want to be liked, and they want to be that agents in this scenario. They want to be their favorite client. Like when I call, I want my agent to go, yes, it's Brynn, I want to answer. And so what you did really well was address both of those pieces. So quick questions, listen to his quick answer. If you had a question, it was a quick question back. Really? Tell me more. Even if you agreed with it. Yep. This was on the 3-car garage thing. A 3-car garage? Really? Like I almost thought you were going to question him on it. And then you were like, me too. I totally get it. And then, so it was a very good match. Yep. Of personalities and validating that everything you're saying, like he totally agrees with, and like you would buy the same house. I love that you said that, and because that's a good observation. That made me think about what he did also really well was he didn't take the answer at face value. Yes. Right, like here's your answer, because we're all programmed for the most part to give the instantaneous response, typically a negative stop or in the conversation kind of response when it comes to anything we're purchasing, right? Okay. But you bring up the fireplace, right? Fireplace. I was going to say the fireplace. Right. So, what's bringing a fireplace? It's Texas, right? Yeah. So if we could put a fireplace out in the pool, would that not suffice? And the bottom line is, I think probably for 90 out of 100 people, they'd probably say, yeah, that'd probably work. And so it's that pulling the thread a little further rather than rushing. Yeah. Right. And
What did you call it about putting the time in up front? What was that statement again?
Right time investing.
Right time investing. That's the example that I'm thinking and taking away as a takeaway for myself, which is that extra 2-step question, just to get it a little further and make sure it's really what you mean, not what you think you mean, not what you think you want, but what you really want, is the difference of showing 40 houses or showing 4.
And how much of a non-negotiable is it really?
Right.
Like how much are you going to defend this wood-burning fireplace?
Or the 3-car garage.
Or the 3-car garage.
Because he bought one without it. Yeah, it's non-negotiable, but I don't even have a garage.
Exactly.
Like, that's bizarre to me.
Yeah.
That is bizarre.
Absolutely. So I think we covered so much in that, everything from personalities and how do you match and mirror and play off of those personalities? How do you be respectful while still getting to the point, still getting the answers that you need? How much time does it take? Just so many great things. And so we've got about 15 minutes left. Yep. So I know my one question that I have is how do you wrap this all up? What's the last? To me, it feels very much like a process.
It is,
as it should be.
It's a system.
It's a system. It's a process. What did we leave out? So I feel like we've kind of got everything leading up to the big event where you're going to write.
I got a suggestion. I don't know what you're going to say, but this is, I know you've done this before because I've watched it with multiple of our joint clients. It's talking about what's going to screw up this deal now. So you finally got under contract. You got somebody make a decision. They made a contract. We know because we're in the business. The appraisal, the inspection. Inspection is a huge one. The appraisals, inspections, the moving day, the closing day are probably the biggest point of conflict, emotion, stress, blank, right? Underwriting with the lender.
Yeah.
Right. So
I hate getting a loan.
In like less than 5 minutes, because she's right, we were running out of time. Before we get to the final sign off and we're done, how do you navigate those things that I think the average salesperson in general tends to avoid and cross their fingers and hopes for the best? Like, God, I hope it appraises. I hope that there's nothing wrong with these walls when the inspection happens, right?
Sure.
Just say, okay, it's all smooth sailing from here. We found you the house. Now let's rock and roll.
Yeah, no problems at all moving forward. I'll take great care of you.
No, I typically set my next meeting, the next step up with the expectation. So I told you that I'm trying to get as few as possible, right? If I'm down to single digits, we're going to go look at houses, and we'll talk about what that's going to look like. And I'll tell them about grading the house on a 1 to 10, and then I'm going to ask them if they'd like to make an offer. I'm also going to talk to them about what's next with their lender. If you've already been pre-approved and done everything with them, you're great. I'll send them the contract as soon as we get one under contract, and then we're going to do the inspections. I don't want to belabor the process at this point with them, because I've already spent an hour and a half to 2 hours. So at this point, anything else I say is likely to be mush.
Sure. Meaning they're not going to take it in.
They're not going to take it in. It's going to be overload.
Yeah. Right.
So at this point, we're going to talk about what happens next, and we're going to talk about going and looking at homes.
That's a huge takeaway for anyone listening. You always have to end every conversation with the next step is.
That's right.
Because we're moving towards this railroad track, and once we get the client on the railroad track, or if you are the client, it just becomes really clean and easy from that point forward. It's people never wrangle them to it. They just leave them guessing.
That's right.
Right?
So I give them their next steps. Now, if they gave me 90 homes in their list and we couldn't narrow it down any further than 90 homes, then the next step conversation is, okay, I want you to go home with this MLS. You're going to have access to it. Open it in your email. You're going to go through and you're going to start looking at these homes, and I want you to be very critical about all the homes that you see. Our goal is to find the top 10% of the homes out of this 90 homes.
Wow. So
that means you should have 9 homes by the time you're done. The best. You can't buy 20 homes. Right. So look at the top 10 best homes, 9, 10%, top 10%.
Because we know they're all within your criteria.
Yes.
They're all within your non-negotiables.
So what are the best ones?
I love that.
And so when they do that, I tell them you're going to grade it on an interested. Ones that you don't want, you're going to go not interested. And if it's not a top 10%, you're going to mark it as yellow. It's going to be a maybe. And we'll come back to it. And that's how the MLS system works. So they can see, and I can look and see their top 9 favorite homes that they're interested in seeing.
That are currently available.
So then when we go look at those, and 9 is honestly too much for me. I'd really like to keep you around 6 to 7. But we'll go look at those homes. And now we know that the top 10% of what you saw didn't qualify for something, so everything else is going to be second best, which means I can help draw them into making a buying decision because they're already looking at
in the
best.
first or second showing.
Wow.
Like
Right.
day, yeah.
Right.
Because
So
otherwise, what I'm agreeing to as a consumer is, if I want to keep looking at 10 more homes, I already acknowledge that they're not going to be as good as these 9
They're
that I already
already
saw.
in second place.
It's already
That's well
second
played,
place.
sir. Well played.
Well, I
wish
say,
you'd followed that process.
That's pretty darn good.
And then we'll talk about the inspections when we get into next steps.
Right.
And the inspector's job is to make this thing look like it's about to fall down. So let's just recognize that. And we're going to look for safety and structure items. And so each process or each step has another process, and I just layer it in. Mm-hmm. So no, I don't talk about the things to be afraid of up front, but I do talk about moving day. Moving sucks. That's why I haven't sold.
Let's not skip those. So you get them down the 9. You show all 9. You're going to get, in theory, 1 out of the 9. You're going to make an offer on. Mm-hmm. If that one doesn't work, you just go to the second one, make an offer until we have a contract. Right? Like that's bam, bam, bam. 1 or 2 times out, you're going to make an offer. How often the time? What percentage of the time would you make an offer?
What percentage of the time we're going to make an offer? Most clients will make an offer on that first time out.
Because of your process.
Because of the process.
So you make an offer now. So now what's the
Sometimes.
next step that you say? The next step is what?
Most of the time when we don't make an offer, it's because we didn't have enough options.
Okay.
And we have to wait on the timing of the market,
Got it.
or we have to change a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's what happens. I mean,
I love that.
Most of the time it's going to be
Because
making
you got
an
a
offer.
clean no, and now we know why.
That's right. Now, you did ask me a question. I missed it.
Well, so we're now under contract.
Sure.
Right? So what is the next step that you communicate to make sure we're getting to the sale efficiently?
Okay, so I deal with a lot of savvy buyers as well as people that are not as savvy, right? So I have a requirement in my office that if you're a first-time home buyer, you will do an inspection, and we're not going to discuss it. It's going to happen.
Right.
And I'll give you a couple of options on who you want to select, or you can pick your own inspector. That's fine. I don't care, but it will happen. If you're a savvy investor who's bought multiple properties in the past, I let you make that choice. You just have to sign off that said you didn't want to. But I don't even give you a choice on a first-time home buyer.
Love that.
Okay. Then I talk about what the inspection is going to look
You said
like.
investor.
I'm sorry. If you're an investor, you're a savvy buyer. You're buying houses all the time.
So not just an investor. If I am this is going to be my home, and I've bought 6 houses, I can choose.
You could choose not to do an inspection.
Okay.
Now, if you've only bought 6 homes, I'm gonna question that, right? Like, I'm not gonna take it as is. I'm gonna say,
It's
Brynn,
$300, dude.
I'm gonna say, listen, you're about to make a 6-figure decision over 3 digits.
Yeah.
Can we just put that in perspective, right?
Right.
Right.
We'll talk about what the inspector's job is. If you're savvy, I'm not going to talk to you like you're a child. I'm going to say when that inspection report comes back, the things that we like to focus on are safety and structure. Things that we didn't know about from the seller's disclosure, those are all hot buttons. Yeah. If you're a first-time home buyer, I'm going to dumb it down. I'm going to say, look, you're looking at this like it's the greatest new nest. Mm-hmm. The seller thinks they've got a mansion. The inspector is going to make it look like an outhouse. So, and it's going to smell like one by the time we're done. So let's just understand that just because the inspection report comes back with all kinds of really scary things, that's their job.
And it's 10 pages long.
Right.
I remember when we purchased our first house, I'm like, what is this?
Right. I remember that I had to,
Oh my
they
gosh.
showed, so I always thought electrical was scary, right? And there was replace 17 GFCIs. And I was like, oh my God,
Oh my
deal's
gosh.
over.
Deal.
And then the
Deal
the
killer.
person who was actually helping Chrissy buy her first house, I was like, we should cancel. And it was like, that's like $100, dude. I was like, oh, okay, I'll listen to you now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not a big deal. And then there's, anti-siphon device. I mean, you clean the AC. Every single inspection report comes back with clean the AC now. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you just lay that up ahead of time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, so from the lender side, I'll just tell you that Brynn actually brought it up as far as, I think the average salesperson makes it too easy by saying, oh, it's going to be perfect from here on out, because they think that's good customer service. And I think the exact opposite. I think you got to set the expectations. It's going to be absolutely freaking horrible. I'm going to take your firstborn child and a blood sample. And anything less than that then is great, right?
Right.
And so, using the analogy I've used for a decade now, which is, it's like an airplane ride. Expect turbulence. I'm a great pilot. I'm landing the plane, but you're still going to get audited. We're still going to need more documentation. When you think you're done with documentation, you get audited 3 days before closing. We're going to need some more documentation. The appraisal could come in low. Here's what that means, and here's the options. If the appraisal comes in low, it's not a deal killer. Usually the seller wants to sell, the buyer wants to buy, and we meet somewhere in the middle. Not always, but don't freak out if it comes in low. It's just an option. We have an opportunity to renegotiate.
that's right.
And then pointing out the inspection. If they have questions about that, I defer back to realtors. But then, the stress is always a couple days before closing. And so I just think massive communication running into that last couple of days as far as...
That's a good takeaway for me too. I haven't had the issue with appraising.
That's awesome.
I don't know.
Well, it's probably because you're a great agent that actually knows the value of properties more often than not, right?
That's probably true.
And also a lot of your
that.
houses that you sell are investors. So you've got a mathematical equation of what this house is worth based on cash flow.
Sure.
It's not an emotional buy or sell. It's like,
not.
does it work
So
or not?
true, yeah.
So you might not see that quite as often. That's interesting.
I really don't. You did bring up one other thing that I thought was good when you're talking about the expectations. Mm-hmm. I came from, my career has come from stated income loans.
Yeah.
So every time I've had to come back and get a new loan, I pretty much hate you guys, right?
And you tell me that all the time.
Absolutely. I hate that process almost as much as I hate moving.
Right.
At the same time, it's still a necessity, right? I'm not, infinitely wealthy on my own, and so I have to keep coming back and asking for money. So you just keep telling me how bad it's going to suck ahead of time.
Right.
I'll have proper expectations, no problem.
On that note, too, I want to talk about from a referring partner standpoint. If I am talking to somebody that has never used the Sigman team before, I really have started going into detail about how different our team is. And that it's not going to be like anything they've ever experienced before, for better or worse. Mm-hmm. And it will take 3 deals, not 3 leads. It'll take probably 3 transactions for you to really make a decision on whether our team is someone that you can see yourself doing business with moving forward. I have found that in the past, when I have tried to make it sound great for everyone, that's when I get more objections after they've dipped their toe in, after they've started sending leads, and they're like, well, what the heck? Why am I talking to 3 or 4 different people? I'm like, that's a process I was telling you about. That's so awesome. So now I make it really clear.
That's so awesome.
Now I make it really clear. That's
different.
The awesome system. That's so different. That's what I was talking about.
And different is always scary.
Indifferent's always scary. Yeah. So,
speaking of which, this is super uncomfortable for me. And so when you brought to me, are you sure you want to jump into this whole webinars and YouTube channels and podcasting? My answer was, let's do it for 6 months.
Let's do
it. I know in 6 months I'll know if I really like this gig or not. But I think you got to know what you're doing. I love that. It's just setting realistic expectations.
Expectations.
What final takeaways do you have? Any last things to share? Again, going back to the title of how do you really help your buyers and sellers make a buying or selling decision? What did we miss that's you think is super important, or the most important thing that we did cover that a up and coming agent, team, lender, referring partner might need to know, or even a buyer or seller?
It really boils down to, we're in the people business, and if we stop looking at the business before the people, then we've got our priorities right? Does it make sense? It's people business. It's not business people. So if we just start with the people and really genuinely caring about who they are, what they want, and that you want to help them get the absolute best of their desires, the business takes care of itself. And that's what this whole process is all about.
I love that. You should keep your long hair. That was a very flower answer, and I love that answer. What about you, Brynn? Final takeaways, thoughts?
Oh gosh, I loved every single thing that everybody said. I think it really uncovers that it's okay to be bold, and it's okay to hold your ground, and it's okay to keep continuing to ask questions. And I think that delivery is a huge piece of it. I really do. I think saying what you are about to experience before you then start delivering things. I just think it's really powerful, and people need realtors like you. They need realtors or lenders like you. More of us, it just elevates the entire industry. So well done.
Good times.
My final thought was, there is a process. If anyone listening were ever to take something from this, it is a process does create great customer service. It does create great customer experience. I would add now, after your answer, because I agree with that, removing the people or removing yourself from the process is what creates problems, right? That's when you get to a big corporation, big business, and that's where it doesn't feel the same, right?
That's right.
But you can inject yourself and points of human contact as many times as you want throughout it, but the process is the answer. And that's how you can help people get to a decision faster, more efficiently, make everyone feel great about it, make the referring partner, make the buyer, the seller all feel good about what's happening in a way that a close is no longer viewed as dirty.
That's right.
So, but I love working with you. And I
love working with you too,
yeah.
man.
Well done.
I love that you.
Brynn, how did we do the first one? I'm sorry. What?
I was going to say, I love that you closed somebody in the parking lot on the way in here by telling them that they couldn't have a loan right now.
Yep, 6 months.
That's still a close.
That's 6 months.
Absolutely.
And thanks for talking me into this thing. This is going to be fun.
This is number one.
Check it off the box.
Check it off the
Cheers.
box.
For more information, reach out to us. I'm sure at the bottom of the video we'll have our contact information. I'm sure that's how this thing works. There's probably a button to click. If not, eventually there'll be a button to apply now.
Apply now.
Apply now.
But thanks so much. Take care, guys.
Bye.